Hey, what's up, everybody? Coming to you today. It's a wet Sunday out here in California, Northern Cali. Finally getting some rain. So, anyways, coming to you today, this afternoon, early evening. I'm doing the What's Next, and this is going to be on George Kambosos and Lee Selby after they fought in their IBF final eliminator to determine the number one contender in the IBF in the 135-pound lightweight division. It was an IBF title final eliminator. Actually, a lot of significance in this fight. If you don't care about this one, you should, because this might end up being who Teofimo Lopez fights next, the winner of this fight, which was Kambosos, or could be lined up against, or one of these guys is going to be the winner of this fight, which was George Kambosos, could end up being the world champion soon. So, let's jump right into it at the fight itself. The reason I'm doing both of these guys is because they're both in the top 10. Selby was the number 9 lightweight in the world for me coming in, and George Kambosos wasn't ranked, but Kambosos, because he got the victory, breaks into the top 10 and is now, in line to fight for a world title. So, all that being said, the story of the fight first, it ended up being a pretty solid action-packed fight between these two. I personally felt, just from the eyeball test, just from watching it, I wasn't scoring the fight. I was busy, so I was paying attention, but wasn't full-on focus, scoring it like I do sometimes. But my take on it was that I thought Selby was outworking and was controlling the tempo of the fight, was outworking Kambosos, but the one thing that I felt, the reason the judges gave the fight to Kambosos was based on the fact that he was landing the harder shots. See, Selby, not a big puncher. He wasn't a big puncher when he was world champion at 126, and he just has not carried the power up, obviously, to 135 pounds. That's why I was really shocked when he moved up to 135, but I've been impressed with Selby so far. Beating Antoine Douglas and Ricky Burns, that's not huge, but in my opinion, for him, that's a big deal, because those are the guys Ricky Burns has fought all the way up at 140. He might be an older fighter, but, he's a game former 3-division world champion. Antoine Douglas is a natural lightweight. The fact that Selby put himself in this position, I thought was impressive. And again, an eyeball test, I probably would have given him the fight, but it was close. I do agree it was close. The judges scored it a split decision for Kambosos, and nobody really complained. It was a close fight, so I don't think you could really argue that. As I said, I believe Kambosos landed the harder shots, and that's probably why the judges gave him the fight. And, that makes sense, because sometimes that's how it works. Kambosos now, number one contender to Teofimo Lopez in the IBF world title. Now, I'm interested in seeing, so the big question is, what's next for George Kambosos following the victory over Lee Selby? We'll also discuss Lee Selby's what's next right after. I'm discussing the victor first in Kambosos. So right now, I think there's a couple options. Either Teofimo Lopez says, I want to take an optional defense just to take a mandatory defense of my IBF title just to hold on to all 4 belts. I'm going to do that. To wait around for a big fight. And he fights Kambosos, because in my opinion, I don't think Lopez would worry at all about Kambosos. So I think Kambosos, he might get the shot against Lopez. Or, the IBF grants, there's two other options. Or the IBF allows an extension, grants him an optional defense prior to having to face Kambosos, and then the IBF orders an interim fight between Kambosos and Isaac Cruz, who just knocked out Diego Magdaleno to grab the number 2 spot in the IBF. They order that for the interim belt, with the winner to fight for the official world title. I think that's an option. Or the IBF strips Lopez, or Lopez vacates the belt because he doesn't care about making a mandatory there. and then you have Selby face Isaac Cruz for the vacant IBF lightweight championship. So those are the three options right there that I think are going to happen. I think Kambosos is either going to get the fight with Lopez, I think, or he's going to fight for the vacant interim title against Isaac Cruz, or he's going to fight for the vacant full title against Isaac Cruz. Because Isaac Cruz, the same night, knocked out Diego Magdaleno. So, in the very first round to grab the IBF's number 2 spot. So, that's what I think is what's going to happen next for Kambosos. If I had to pick one, I really don't know, because the IBF has not ordered the mandatory status of Kambosos to fight Lopez as of yet. They said this was an IBF final eliminator. Most of the time they will order that, but given the fact that Lopez is the undisputed champion, will they allow Lopez to fight Vasily Lomachenko again? I think that might be the only exception the IBF makes. They say, hey, you're going to fight Lomachenko again, undisputed title, and we're going to let these two guys fight for the vacant interim belt, and then you have to fight the winner, The winners have to fight each other. I think that's the only exception the IBF might grant, and, hopefully... I personally don't want to see Lopez fight Kambosos next. I want to see him fight Lomachenko. So if I had to choose who I want, I'd have to say I don't want him to fight Kambosos. But, it ain't about what I want. So we'll see. That's George Kambosos' what's next. Let's look at Lee Selby, the former featherweight champ's what's next. Selby's got that long road. He performed well, but in Selby's what makes Selby an attractive fight, even though he's got to start from scratch now, nobody's complaining, nobody's mandating him to fight Kambosos again. So, so what Selby's going to run into is, he's going to have to look at the fact that Selby's going to have to do one of two things. He's going to have to... the one thing he has working for him, excuse me, guys, I got distracted by something. The one thing that Selby has working for him is he can, Selby is not a hard hitter, and he's somewhat of a name, so, fighters are going to be attracted to that. So they're going to want to throw their names in the hat and say, hey, we'll fight this guy. So I believe that Selby will get a crack at somebody. He'll get somebody will give him an opportunity. And I think the IBF will probably let him go into some kind of an eliminator, but he's just gonna have to spend 2021 getting back in the mix is what's gonna be the problem. So we might not see him back in this kind of position again until the end of next year. Does he want to fight Ricky Burns again in a rematch? Does he want to try to set himself up for against somebody else like a Richard Comey? That would be big, but Comey fights for top rank. So it just all depends on what Selby wants to do, because he kind of set himself up nicely for this fight with Kambosos, and he came up short. So we'll see what happens, but that's the what's next on George Kambosos and Lee Selby. Sorry, guys, I almost had a flat tire here. Got to go back to the gas station, so that kind of distracted me a little bit towards the end there, but that's what's next with George Kambosos and Lee Selby, 2 lightweight contenders. Hope you guys enjoyed this. True Boxing, you've been hit with the truth.